we've had some fun today talking about music and so forth, and I hope you guys have enjoyed that. But we're going to turn our attention and pivot a bit to politics because, after all, the legislature is in session at the Capitol, state Capitol in Jackson. And to that end, we've got Representative Fred Shanks. He represents District 60. That includes Rankin County in the state of Mississippi. Good afternoon there. We're in the afternoon, Representative Shanks. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here as always and cut it up with you.
Man, yeah. So we earlier in the show, we had our news director, J.T. Mitchell, on the program discussing the week's events and lots of stuff going on. You had the committee deadline.
Correct.
This past Tuesday.
That's correct.
Yeah.
He did a good job of catching up what we've been up to. In the House, it seemed like as soon as we came in, Philip Gunn cranked up that D8 bulldozer, and we hadn't looked back. We have passed some big items out of the House, and now we're starting to get to just our regular calendar.
Yeah.
So we've been quite busy.
All right. So what about your committee? Where do you serve? Tell everybody.
I'm the chairman of the Constitution Committee,
yep.
And the big item that I have been working on for the past year and passed out of committee on Monday is going to be the Ballot Initiative Fix.
Okay.
And we're going to hopefully take that up. I'm planning on taking that up Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. All right. So were there multiple bills filed to address that issue?
There were multiples. This one I happen to be working on with Philip Gunn and quite I had some help from. I've got some young up and coming conservative guys that I had been talking to, and I've talked to our mutual friend Jeff Smith on it. He was helpful, and I even went back to talk to Representative Tommy Reynolds. Because he was there when a lot of people don't know, but this is not something. The initiative process is not something we've had for a long time. It was started, I believe, in '92.
Yeah.
So I went back to talk to Tommy Reynolds about it. Since he was there at the time when it was installed, and he likes the bill that we've got, and I was just trying to get a bunch of different opinions on it.
Okay, and which is what I think you should do when you chair a committee like that. Mm-hmm. You should solicit input from a number of parties that
absolutely
get their advice and their feelings and views and cobble together some legislation.
Absolutely. I reached across on the other side of the aisle, talked to many Democratic members, and they're all on board. So I feel good about it.
All right, so where did we land, the bill that came out of committee?
Okay, the big fix, and to your listeners that don't know, the problem that we ran into was when medical marijuana was on the initiative. It was an initiative. There was language that said you have to get a certain amount of signatures per congressional district to get it on the ballot. And we used to have 5 districts, now we have 4. And the problem was the language never got changed to say that we have 4 districts. So to correct that, we're going to have a kind of a pro rata approach to it to say, what districts we have at the time of the proposed initiative is what we're going to go with.
Yeah.
And another big item is originally it was constitutional amendments only. Now it's just going to be statutory amendments only. But if an initiative passes, we will not be able. The legislature won't be able to touch it for 2 years.
Okay.
And unless there's a dire emergency, that's defined in the bill. But outside of that, legislature can't touch anything for 2 years. 2 years is a long time to get your program up and running or to do whatever you got to do. So we felt pretty good with that number.
So just to clarify, if this should go through the Senate as is and then be signed by the governor and enacted into law, at that point the citizens would have an avenue, a mechanism to collect signatures, follow the procedure as prescribed by law, place a measure on the ballot.
Correct.
It would be, in this case, a ballot initiative as opposed to a referendum, which is where citizens go to the ballot to vote on present law, existing law. That's correct. A referendum. This would be a ballot initiative. But it would limit the citizens to only, I guess, establish or amend statute as opposed to amending the Constitution. Correct.
They can, they can do any type of law that the legislature can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to amend the state's Constitution, that would require the legislature passing a measure, an amendment, if you will, to place on the ballot then that the citizens would have to ratify, have to vote and approve to amend the Constitution. That's our present process.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, all right. So are the citizens, I'm just asking the question, I'm not really sure, is there anything they're missing out on by not being able to get a measure on the ballot that would be initiated by citizens to amend the Constitution? In this case, they're limited to only statute. Is there anything they're missing out on?
I really don't think so. I have not really had that come up on anything getting into the Constitution.
Okay.
And, you know, to open the Constitution up is, that's probably the biggest deal that we've got in the state of Mississippi. And it's just you don't want to open it up for just anything. And even after the medical marijuana process went through, I reached out, and I've talked to a lot of the different organizations that were pushing that measure. They even coming back, they were like, I don't know if that would have been a good idea to have that in the Constitution, and I agree with them.
Yeah.
So no, and as far as if it's any type of grassroots organization that wanted to come up with any measure they wanted to, nothing's going to really change for that group, for a grassroots organization.
So all right, so I'm being advised that this is a concurrent resolution.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It does
so
not
just require the governor's signature.
It does not.
Okay. All right. Help me out there. What can qualify as a concurrent resolution versus requiring? Do you know? Versus requiring the governor to sign it and enact it into law. The distinction between a concurrent resolution and a bill that must be signed by the governor and approved to become law. Our friend here that advises of that's listening, and he'll probably weigh in and tell us. It's a little bit of a wonky legal question. But anyhow, which I don't know that would be a problem. This particular matter would be a problem for the governor anyhow, but as a concurrent resolution, I'm sure something makes what we're doing here eligible for that. All right, so the other big question, so you've clarified for the audience that, I think this is the big thing, the language has been cleaned up.
Correct.
From what we presently have on the books, which really is mathematically impossible. We couldn't really meet the guidelines and the requirements of having equal number of signatures across the congressional districts, because that language was faulty, honestly. It only worked if you have 5 congressional districts.
Correct.
So we cleaned that up, and I've read it, and you're right. The way this works, it don't matter how many congressional districts we have, this language would work, and it wouldn't be subject to challenge on this mathematical technicality, which is what happened on Initiative 65.
That's exactly right.
The Supreme Court came down and said, that doesn't really meet the requirements of the law.
That's right. I mean, they made the right call.
I think so, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that respect. So, all right, so we got that clean. And the other big thing is the number of signatures, because there was some discussion about that. Talk about that.
Well, it's going to be it's really the same. It's 12% of the gubernatorial election. Or the previous election.
Yeah,
it'll be 12% total.
Okay, so in the previous governor's election, because there was some discussion, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe even some bills filed that would have required that of the number that voted in the presidential election, and then even a higher number, 15%. So the bar was a little higher.
Correct, and that was mentioned, and that did get brought up, but that's where we're at on this bill, on the 12%.
Okay, gotcha. So that stays the same, no change there. The cleaned up the language that essentially made it impossible for the citizens to get initiative to the ballot. And we've also got a situation where we can go directly to statute, and we don't have an avenue to mess with the Constitution. The bar's a little higher there. That's got to come from the legislature, and then it's got to go to the citizens. The legislature, as I understand it, cannot amend the Constitution unilaterally.
Correct.
Has to go to the ballot to get the citizens to approve that. So that's where we stand. All right, when are we going to put this on the floor?
I'm planning on taking this up Tuesday.
Okay.
And I'll have Representative Nick Baines going to handle it for me on the floor.
Okay.
From there, of course, it'll go to the Senate.
Yep.
And, I do, since your listeners are more apt to want to know the process, we're going to need everybody to call the Senate, call your senator, and really push this. I've not really have too many conversations with them on the other side, but I don't know that they have a bill.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah, really need some help getting through the Senate.
How do you feel about? We got about 30 seconds. We'll come back for another segment. What about on the House side? You feel good about it?
Oh yeah, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Okay. Yeah. We got Representative Fred Shanks in the SuperTalk Studios. We're chatting with him about all that stuff they're working on at the legislature. We'll come right back. It's Gerard and Rhino on middays in the SuperTalk Studio, as well as Representative Fred Shanks. All right, Representative, we've been talking about this bill that I know you spent a lot of time on, getting it out of committee. Concurrent resolution does not require. I'm still trying to figure that out, and I'm sorry I don't understand all those legal machinations, but I'm going to get to the bottom of that for our audience. But nonetheless, this is something that I think people wanted. We needed to fix the ballot measure process, because clearly after the Supreme Court ruling, we learned it's broken. We don't have one, so people have this. And the big caveat that you mentioned was that should they go to the ballot box, the citizens, with a measure and approve it, it becomes law, and the legislature cannot touch it for 2 years.
That's correct. The only instance where if something happened to where an emergency situation, yes, we could, but outside of that, yeah, it's the program, whatever it may be, would be be a 2 year. That's a long time. So if anybody's got a program they're thinking about doing and they've put the time in and it passes, then 2 years is long enough to see what it's going to do. So, and I mean, a lot of people have a misconception that we're just going to come in and start changing stuff, and we would have no reason to do so if the program's working right and everything's going well. So, yeah, I wouldn't really anticipate any problems there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and there's a couple other things we probably ought to suggest as well, that there's some constraints and parameters that restrict essentially what the citizens. The citizens can't go to the ballot with a measure that says we're eliminating the whole state government. They can't do that, for example. So tell us about that. There's some limitations.
It's some of them. It has to be anything that currently the legislature can do. Yeah, any kind of law like that.
Okay.
I know they cannot do away with PERS. I know that's specifically mentioned in the law. Yeah. And we've put some other things in there to just kind of make it flow a little better. But we have a single subject rule. The first person that comes up with whatever idea for a ballot they have and gets to the Secretary of State's office, that's that's going to be the idea there. And we will have 5 or up to 5 initiatives on the ballot at one time.
Okay.
So
up to 5.
Wow. Yeah. And to me it did get a little confusing on this medical marijuana when on the ballot itself. There was a lot to read, and so we came up pretty generous. I think 5's plenty. To sit there and read while you're voting on something.
Yeah. And something else is if a measure would essentially increase expenditures by the state, it would enact something that would cause a significant increase of spending. You got to have an offsetting funding mechanism.
That's you said it. That's it. You have to. The sponsor will have to identify what program they want to cut.
Yep.
If it costs more than the appropriated amount of money. Okay. And, of course, now the Legislative Budget Office will also have to have a fiscal analysis of it, and that would be on the ballot itself as well to show the voter, hey, this program is going to cost X.
Yeah. So, and it's I guess it's a bit subjective as to what would constitute kind of a major expenditure. I'm looking for the terminology there, but there's something to that effect. Substantial maybe is the word that was used. Substantial cost or expenditure. Also, if the measure would cause a reduction in the amount of state funds available. So you couldn't go to the ballot box and say we're cutting taxes or something like that in some substantial way that would reduce revenues to the state. And, really you don't want the citizens out there, in my view, because who knows what – if you said, send everybody $1 million, here we go, so that really wouldn't work. And appropriations cannot be made through the initiative process as well. So anyhow, you got some parameters around that and a few safeguards and constraints that not only do I think they make sense, but this is consistent with what we have in other states as well that have ballot measure processes.
I want to say maybe it's like 28 states even have a process. Yeah. Some don't. Most are statutory only. Right. And that's kind of the research I found out.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, we'll see where this goes. It's got to go over to the Senate.
That's correct.
And get approved. Does not, because it is a concurrent resolution, does not require signature by the governor. But anyhow, a lot of work going on there. So what do you think about the medical marijuana, the medical cannabis bill? I think that's the big news, right, from the legislature this week. The governor signed off on that in the nick of time.
Yeah.
Were you surprised?
The 0 hour.
Yeah.
No, I
did he sign? Were you surprised?
I am. I kind of personally, I thought he was just going to kind of just let it lay for 5 days.
Yeah.
Would ultimately become law, but he did sign it, and I'm glad. Hey, let's move on. The people who want it, and I think the way I understand, it's about 120 days out.
Yep.
And I'm kind of anxious to see how it plays out.
Got a lot of work to do. A big responsibility placed now on the Department of Health with Dr. Dobbs.
Correct.
He seems up to the task.
I think he'll do a good job.
Yeah.
I really do.
I hope so. And so it's with number 37, are we? The 37th state or 38th, Rhino, that to enact medical marijuana. I don't know.
I want to say the 38th.
I think we have 37. We become the 38th. So see where that goes. All right, the other big thing we've been talking about here on the program and on Paul's show as well, you and I have talked about this as well, is tax reform.
Absolutely.
So we got a bill coming out of the House. We got a bill that the Senate announced this past week.
That's right.
Senator Harkin's on with Paul discussing that earlier in the week. Of course, Representative Trey Lamar on the House side. I came on with Paul yesterday, tried to break down the differences between those measures, and
they did a good job.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm always worried because I know it gets into a lot of wonky numbers and stuff, and it's so hard to communicate on the air like this.
Well, I really appreciate you breaking it down for your listeners because, this is you got two different plans. Eliminating taxes or cutting taxes, you can't argue with that. Either way it goes, that's always a good thing, a conservative thought. But you did a good job breaking it down because the citizens need to know which option they need to back.
Yeah.
And whichever one they want to back, they need to call the opposite
Their
side
reps.
of the legislature. Yeah, absolutely.
Let
Let
them
us
know
know what you want.
Yeah, I think so. And just broadly and at the highest level, the House bill is way more generous to taxpayers in terms of reducing taxes,
correct,
income taxes.
I mean, obviously, I'm biased, and I'm for the House plan, but to me, it is transformational.
Yeah.
You will actually see a big difference.
Yeah,
No
question. It's a bold move. On the Senate side, it is a great deal more cautious, is the way I'm describing it, and it does not provide as much tax relief as the House bill does, but it not as risky.
That's
so
right.
You've got this risk that when you start cutting taxes, are you going to blow a hole in the budget? Or are we going to find ourselves in a situation where we simply are not generating sufficient revenue to cover expenses, some of which we're obligated on, and so that's a consideration. So there's a fairly significant difference, let's just say that, between the two bills that coming out of the respective chambers. I really would like to see, and you and I have talked about this, I really like to see you guys get together. Certainly let's start with the leaders of the respective chambers and then the third branch, that being the governor. Let's get them all together and hammer this thing out.
I agree.
Man.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Get it out. But I'm real positive about it. I think the people want it. Our leadership wants it. So I think we're going to come up with something good.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we can sort of make our mark as a state.
Absolutely. And
following the trend that we're seeing in a number of states who are seeking to reduce their state income tax burden.
Well, on that note, one of my colleagues, he mentioned the other day in our caucus meeting, he said, look, I've got some people who are in the military, and they don't live here, but they are moving to Mississippi to retire just on hearing that we are thinking and trying to cut taxes.
Okay.
So that was, I like to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
We're
that's
on the
good
right path.
That's good to hear. So I think we have to be honest about it, folks, honestly, when you look at what the goal of any sort of serious tax reform is. Of course, one goal is to let the people have more of their hard-earned money.
Absolutely.
No question about it. But another goal is we got to work on growing our economy, and we got to boost our population in order to do that and grow our economy and bring in more workers that earn higher levels of pay and really stimulate economic activity and economic growth, that consume in the state, pay taxes in the state. That is part of the goal as well. And in being one of the 3 states that lost population, we got to have some sweeteners to sell.
Absolutely. I have a guy in my district who just bought a existing company in Connecticut with 80 workers. He's going to be moving down here.
Oh, wow.
It'll be like giving them an
That's
extra
awesome.
bonus to just by moving them here.
That's what we want. We want more of that. So we got to have something in the toolbox to use
Absolutely.
to sell, and I think this would do it for
I
us.
100% agree.
Representative Shanks has been our guest here on Middays. He represents Rankin County. He's the chair of the Constitution Committee in the House of Representatives. Appreciate all your efforts, sir. And
Absolutely.
you and I are going to see Kaylee McEnany tomorrow
I'm
night.
looking forward to that.
We're going to have a good time with that. Fred Shanks has been our guest. We'll be back on Middays. Stay with us.